And away we go. It is the Nightcap brought to you by Hail Mary Sports Bar right here on BearcatJournal.com. Hail Mary's. Hi, Aaron. Located in
Hi.
Cheviot. You forgot to click loop, didn't you?
I did. This one.
Hail Mary's is located in Cheviot, right on Harrison Avenue. They're in the Dora District. They have a massive selection of TVs, 9-screen video wall. They've got all the DirecTV sports packages. You can get all the games, including every Cincinnati game, which will be on the 9-screen video wall. They have a walk-in cooler, brand new draft lines, and they pour the coldest beer around, and they do so in 32.8 degree frosted glasses. All right. Now, there we go. There we go. I mean, I don't mind. I can read the ads with the camera on, but it surprised me.
Me too.
Oh, busy day today. Practice open. Of course, Aaron, practice is going to be open on Thursday. Scott Satterfield, I think, at that point is going to name a starting quarterback, and Bearcat Journal will not be there. It'll be the first thing we miss all year.
Neither of you are going to be there.
Keegan is in Myrtle Beach with his family on vacation. And
didn't he do this last year too?
I think it's out of his control. I think it's like a family thing. And they do schedule, they're kind enough to do it after camp. Like if he just missed a week of higher ground, we would have issues. But we're back from higher ground. Things should be fine. But Kelsey has a volleyball game Thursday night. She plays at 5. Practice ends at 5. And Keegan's in Myrtle Beach. So I expect the quarterback to be named in the one thing that we haven't been at in like a year and a half. So what can you do? Anywho, a lot of good stuff today. We talked to Corey Kiner, talked to Cam Wilson, talked to Sterling Burkhalter, talked to Tyson Veit. So that stuff is all right here on the YouTube channel. You can check all that out. And we are rolling along. We are 11 days from kickoff. So it's good stuff. Excited. But we're gonna have Drew Adams on tomorrow night to talk some summer workouts and things of that nature on the BCJ pod. Let's keep up the basketball theme of this week as the non-conference schedule was made official today. If you've been on Bearcat Journal, you've known, I think, 10 of 11. I think the only one that wasn't public before today or like hinted at, rumored, reported, whatever, was Alabama State on November 27th. So that one's new. All the other stuff is stuff that if you've been following closely, you are aware of. And if not, there you go. It's right there on the screen. You have 2 Power 4 level road games, Georgia Tech and Villanova. You've got Xavier at home, Dayton neutral. The rest are bye games. I think maybe one more, like depending on once you get settled into the Big 12, and we'll get into this part of my thought process in a little bit. I think that's right about the sweet spot because at 20 games in the Big 12, which if you don't know, they're playing 20 Big 12 games this year. We've talked about it a bunch.
Is Howard considered a bye game since it's the backside of a 1-1?
I consider it a bye game because of their metrics.
Well, I get that. I just didn't know if you would consider it because, again, it is the backside of a 1-1.
You can call it whatever. It's a bye game. Right? Like that. Bye games are low major opponents in your gym.
I guess the point I'm making is I know a lot of people were grumbling about the strength of schedule in out of conference or lack thereof. And I was curious if maybe that game becomes one that is somewhere in that mid-major realm.
They're pretty bad. They're pretty bad.
Well, I understand they are. I'm just wondering if in the future, like that one last game, if you're going to have one that is 1-1, maybe that's the one that becomes the one that's a mid-major where you add some strength to that out of conference with where you had Howard currently.
Yeah, that one, and then the Big East Big 12 Challenge is also going away. So that Villanova game that's in there is another game that's going to be freed up going forward. And remember, with that Howard game, they were working on a game with an A10 opponent that would have been a lot better metrically than Howard. And then when that fell through, they had to kind of scramble a little bit to make the schedule work. So that's kind of where the Howard game came from. So that's a possibility. I mean, there's plenty of possibilities. They do have an MTE, but it's not an on the road. And the NKU thing is part of an MTE with Nichols. So they technically have a 2-game MTE. It's just the NKU game is worked into that.
I guess if we're not calling Howard the back end of a 1-1, then I'm not.
Well, I mean, technically, Howard is the back end of a 1-1. I mean, technically, yes, but like when I talk about like in generic terms, Howard is a bye game, like metrically. So there are plenty of options to add a game or crank this thing up a little bit, but the question is, Aaron, in this league, how far out over your skis do you want to get?
I guess the only valid argument that I've seen is that you really can't afford a bad loss. And I understand that.
Okay. Yes, you can.
I
think it's a bad argument.
I'm just saying I think it's a fair argument. I'm not saying it's a good argument. I just don't think it's okay. I think that it's the in conference is a bloodbath. It's unlike anything that the country has ever seen, that the sport has ever seen, and I don't think it's going away anytime soon. That said, you have some wiggle room to have some get your roster right before the conference comes, and I think you should take advantage of that. I don't think you need to create a gauntlet for yourself in the out of conference because of what you have in if you're comparing this to the SEC, to the Big Ten, it's not the same. You can say that there are some power players, sure, but it's not an apples to apples comparison. Stack any conference up against despite what happened in the tournament, in the March Madness tournament, it's not an apples to apples comparison, and I will die on that hill.
Yeah, so the main difference being, and we talked about this when comparing this league to like the old Big East that Cincinnati was in, those leagues tend to have a legitimate bottom
somewhere.
And it when you went back to that old Big East, like DePaul was okay when it first started, and then they fell off. South Florida was dreadful. Like there were three Seton Hall and St. John's. St. John's was okay. Seton Hall kind of had fallen off in that era. There was 3, 4, 5 schools, depending on the year, in that 16-team league that you were pretty sure you should get. If you were good, you were pretty sure you should win those games. Even last year, like Oklahoma State wasn't good, but they were far more talented than anything UC ever played at USF.
Oklahoma State, West Virginia, UCF.
So I think it's a couple things that would make you zero in on where they're at for this season. You're still new to the conference. Like you do not have a storied history with Kansas and Kansas State and Iowa State, and you're still adjusting to being in a new league. And on top of that, they're adding 4 more teams in that you know absolutely nothing about. So
one of them is Arizona, by the way.
Right. Being a touch conservative is not a terrible thing when you're looking at this, because you can absolutely overschedule in this league. You can absolutely push yourself too far. When we go back to, think about this, when we go back to the American Athletic Conference days, you would get 5, maybe 6 high major quality games a season throughout your 18-game schedule. You would get 5 or 6, and 2 of them were always Houston, and 2 of them were almost always Memphis. So 4 games against those 2 teams, and then SMU was okay for a while, Wichita was okay for a while, but
you took a lot of those on the chin too.
Right. You didn't have this abundance of strength. And then you would go out and you would play 5, 6. Mick used to usually prefer 5 or 6 X 2-game MTE against lower Power 5 level schools, or a mid-major and a Power 5 level school, and then a home and home, and maybe a neutral. So 5 or 6 Power 5 quality games. When you add that to the 6 that they would play in the American, that's 12 high major quality games out of 31. This season, they're going to play 24. Double. You have 31 games. I did the math, Aaron. I divided 24 by 31 at 77% of your games are going to be against high major opponents. If that's not good enough for you, what are we doing?
Well, and I understand that some people are concerned that the committee that selects the March Madness teams is worried that maybe they aren't looking at those metrics and looking at out of conference. They're looking at the conference win total and not that you played in a gauntlet the entirety of the in-conference schedule, and instead looking at that as a whole, and then you're out of conference as a whole. Maybe
that is people searching for something to be miserable about.
Well, sure.
I mean, if this happens and then that happens and then you multiply by 3 and then my aunt's brother's sister told me.
I am very often the conspiracy theorist, as many people well know, and I'm not even on that side of the argument in this one. I understand that you want to see maybe 1 or 2 more challenging games. I get that. And tell you what, if this team continues to win and come out with a favorable wins over losses at the end of the season, you're going to see Cincinnati invited to some better MTEs than Nichols and NKU. Promise. But you have to win. And truthfully, over the course of the last decade, how often have you won? It's not been great.
You got quite a few 30-win seasons in the last decade, but the past half decade, I think, is what you're aiming for. There's a lot of success in the 5 years before that.
COVID screwed up my entire timeline. Forgive me if it seemed like a decade alone with just that. That Trey Scott jumper to seal the game seems like a lifetime ago.
That it does feel like a decade ago.
I wasn't even working here at that point in time. I was hammered at the game.
So I just don't. I think it's if there was 25, if they had 1 more, to make it 5 of the 11 out of conference games were power conference games. Okay. If they made it 6, I would push back a little bit and say, I don't know about that. I don't know if this is a good idea. Especially going into a league that has 5 top 10 teams.
Well, and truthfully, Dayton, call it what you will. Say it's a non or neutral game. Sure, it's still in your city limits.
Yeah, I mean,
I know it's not included on. I know it's not included on your season ticket schedule. I get that, but it's within your city limits. NKU, a stone's throw away.
Right.
These are, while not home games, they're
essentially you're going on the road for Georgia Tech and Villanova. That's it.
It's not
the rest of it will be,
and again,
you
get things rolling, and this team is running like a well-oiled machine. If you can beat Xavier, which let's not kid ourselves. They haven't been able to do that very often over the course of my life.
Xavier might be bankrupt by then. Who knows?
Well, I saw that story. That's not a good look. But yeah, get this thing rolling and go into the conference schedule with confidence instead of, well, we pissed down our leg against Xavier and Dayton, and here we go.
Or we had 6 high major games, and 4 of them were close, and we lost 3, and we went 3-3 in those games, and now we're 8-3 entering conference play, but we're not feeling great about ourselves.
You got a real chance this season to do some big things.
Right.
And
they're I just think, I don't think, people, fans, and I get it from a fan perspective, you don't care. You'd rather see your team play Duke, Kansas, Kentucky, North Carolina every game. But that's not how college basketball works. And there is some ebb and flow, especially now, like you said, Aaron, we're in an era of the transfer portal. Your team is going to, this is what we're going to see this year from Cincinnati is an anomaly in terms of what they have back. And they still are probably going to have 2 or 3 new guys on the floor regularly.
Well, I didn't make that point, but I appreciate you giving me credit for doing so.
Well, you talked about, you went down the road. You just didn't go all the way. You stopped at the roundabout.
I was connecting the dots and got distracted. Didn't finish the picture.
Yeah. I knew where you were going, so I just gave you credit for it because in my brain you went there. But I mean, it's I just think there's a balance, and I don't think it behooves your team to go insane in the non-conference when you are going to be dealing with a 20-game, 10-week, 20-game, no breaks, no chance to catch your breath gauntlet.
There will be plenty this season in both football and basketball that I'm going to be critical of. Scheduling ain't going to be one of those things.
No. Like I said to somebody who's like, I've had tickets for 27 years. And I was like, yeah, this is the best UC schedule that you're going to see in the 27 years that you've been a fan. So let's go from
USA.
Yeah. Let's go to a 3. Can we go to a 3? Can we get to a 3? All right. Dave and I will have Drew Adams tomorrow night on the BCJ pod. We'll see you there. That's the Nightcap, brought to you by Hail Mary Sports Bar, right here on BearcatJournal.com.
See ya!